So this is now, we go on to chapter number 24. باب التغليظ عقوبة من أمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر وخالف قوله فعله. The chapter on the severe punishment for the person who commands good and forbids evil, but his actions contradict his utterances. Okay. So this is the person now who Taghlid, he says the severe punishment. Taghlid, the severe punishment of the person who commands good and forbids evil, but what happens is his actions contradict his utterances. And here Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi brings two verses. The first is أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. That do you command to the people to piety, to bir. There, the third word there is bir. We've had this word before also. The word bir. Bir means piety, righteousness, goodness. The تَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ, and you forget yourself. وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ, while you are reading the book, while you recite the book. وَأَنْتُمْ, and you تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ, are reciting the book. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, have you no understanding? And then that is very clear. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into Surah Baqarah telling us and that you command the people to piety and forget yourselves, whereas you are the ones who recite the book. Have you no understanding? The first addresses are who? In Surah Baqarah we know the first addresses of this are the people who are the Bani Israel, isn't it? The Bani Israel, right in the beginning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Bani Israel in verse 44. So this is still dealing with the Bani Israel. That the Bani Israel were inviting people towards goodness and they forgot themselves. وَتَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ here would refer to the Torah that the Bani Israel were reading. وَتَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, do you not understand? Addressing the Bani Israel very, very directly. Don't you understand? Can't you understand? Something very, very wrong that you are doing. That you are reciting the book, but you're commanding people to piety, but you're forgetting yourselves. The next verse, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. This is in Surah Saf, verses 2 to verse 3. Allah Ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, O you who believe, لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ, why do you say that which you do not do? In the translation, O you believe, why do you say that which you do not do? كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, it is most abhorrent in the sight of Allah. What? أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ, that you say that which you do not do. So this verse is clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, why do you say what you do not do? You are saying something but you're not doing it. Kabura maqtan indallah, it is a abhorrent thing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you say what you do not do. This is something that is abhorrent. This is something that is disliked in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here again calls it kabura maqtan indallah. It is abhorrent in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do what you do not, to say something and not to do. But as we said, we will see how the emphasis is in the hadith that is brought. And then وَقَالَ تَعَالَى إِخْبَارٌ عَنْ شُعَيْبٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُخَالِفَكُمْ إِلَى مَا أَنْهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ. Allah Ta'ala quotes the words of Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam in Surah Hud, verse 88. Surah Hud, verse 88 has got to do with the story of Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah Ta'ala quotes the words of Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam, وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُخَالِفَكُمْ إِلَى مَا أَنْهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ, that I do not wish to oppose you in a manner that I do the same thing that I forbid you from. So Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam is saying to his people here that وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُخَالِفُكُمْ, I do not want to oppose you in a manner that I do the same thing that I forbid you from. I'm forbidding you from something, but then I do exactly that. So we see that the Nabi of the time was very concerned about his preaching and his actions must always correspond. He wanted his actions to correspond to his preaching. He didn't want his actions to be different from the preaching. And Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam's story is here, and an incident is mentioned in Surah Hud, where Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam is telling us this. And then we can see in our commentary there, they tell us that although these verses, we know the verse number 1 is regarding the Jews, verse number 2 is also regarding the Jews, verse number 3 is regarding the people of the past, the people of Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam. But Muslims are also reminded through this. We know that the Quran is not specific to what is mentioned for them, it applies to us also. We are also reminded about the fact that our dawah, what we invite towards, must match our own actions, and we must practice what we preach. Okay. It shouldn't be like this commentator here says, shouldn't be that you provide light for other people and you yourself, like a candle, you burn yourself out, but you provide light for others and you don't provide that for us. And this, as I told you, as we said in the previous one, is got to do with specifically also about scholars. Right? That theme carries through even in today's hadith. And so the first hadith that is mentioned here is an Abi Zayd Usama ibn Haritha radiyallahu anhu قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول يؤتى بالرجل يوم القيامة فيلقى في النار فتندلق أكتاب بطنه فيدور بها كما يدور الحمار في الرحى فيجتمع إليه أهل النار فيقولون يا فلان ما لك ألم تك تأمر بالمعروف وتنهى عن المنكر فيقول بلى كنت آمر بالمعروف ولا آتيه وأنهى عن المنكر وآتيه متفق عليه. قوله تندلق وبالدال المحملة ومعناه تخرج والأقتاب الأمعاء واحدها. So this hadith is the only hadith in fact in this chapter, and this is where the only hadith, in other words, Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi only brings three ayat and one hadith. From all these hadith, he has chosen this part of the hadith. We'll see which part of the hadith actually, and how graphic this hadith is. Usama ibn Zayd ibn Haritha narrates that I heard the Messenger of Allah saying, a man will be brought on the day of Qiyamah and flung into the hellfire. His intestines will fall out of his body and he will go round in circles with them, just as a donkey goes around a mill. The inmates of the hellfire will gather around him and ask, "Oh, so and so, why are you like this? Were you not the same one who used to command good and forbid evil?" He will reply, "Indeed, I used to command good without doing it myself, and I used to prohibit evil but engaged in it myself." This is in Bukhari and Muslim. So this is a very, very severe warning here, that on the day of Qiyamah, a person will be put into the hellfire. And in the hellfire, his intestines will fall out of his body, and he will go around in circles with them, just as a donkey goes around a mill. Like a donkey goes around a mill. You know, in those days, they used to have a donkey going around with a stone mill in the middle, and the donkey would go around and around the whole day, and eventually the flour would be crushed. Right? It was a stone mill, and they have a donkey attached to it and go around and that way the flour will be made. So the people will ask him, why are you going around and around like this continuously? And he will say, oh, so and so, why are you going around? Weren't you the person who used to command good and forbid evil? And he will reply, I used to command good without doing it myself, and I used to prohibit evil but engaged in it myself. Okay. So we see that again, the men of knowledge, the people or the ulama, the people who are preaching, they have the great responsibility of practicing what they preach. They have to practice what they preach. Just as we saw that in the Bani Israel, there were those people who knew something. They were not prophets, but they were men of knowledge among the Bani Israel. And we saw in the previous hadith that we did today, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you must not become like those people, the ulama of the Bani Israel. Here also we have a similar situation, isn't it? The people are preaching, but they're not doing what they're preaching. They are scholars, but they don't do what they preach.
Okay. The preacher and the flock will suffer. Like he was preaching to the people, not doing what he was supposed to do, and the flock will follow him in waterways.
No. I think what they're saying is that this hadith is directed at the preacher. Yeah. So it's a preacher. He will actually because you saw the emphasis of this hadith. That is why Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi brings it under this chapter to emphasize the importance of the preacher doing what he had to do. Khair.
If somebody is doing wrong and you point out to him,
yes,
must you keep on telling him until he responds, or is one's duty done when one points it out that this is not the right thing that you're doing? You know, the way it's explained here is one is the responsibility of the preacher, or let's say the prophet.
yes,
Is to point out and almost force the person to understand, or convince him to understand what he's doing is wrong. Is that not sufficient that he has been given warning? Or is it that the person who is preaching to that person, that he takes responsibility for what the others are doing wrong? To what level must one convince the sinner
that's
what you're doing is wrong? Do you just stop and say, I've done enough, and then you move away? What exactly is being referred to? Do you totally convincing until he agrees that he's doing wrong?
What Aziz Bhai is trying to
yes,
say,
yes.
maybe at what extent he's saying that there come a time where those that are listening to the preacher will lose trust if he doesn't. The trust is not there. You know, if the preacher doesn't.
No, that's I think that's a very different. I think here we're talking about the
one is a preacher and one person is a layperson.
Layperson, yes.
He's got a message, he understands.
The layperson understands.
Trying to convince.
Yes, when the layperson is trying to convince the sinner. So, I don't think, Uncle, is that a layperson carries the burden of convincing a person. Right? That burden is not the layperson's or even the preacher's responsibility. To the best of your ability, you have to present the argument to the best of your ability only. And when you present that argument to the best of your ability, then you have done your responsibility, right? And also you have to try to do it with al-hikmah wal-maw'izatul hasana, with wisdom and with good advice. This is what we learned from before. So once a person has tried to give over the message and you've tried to give that dawah to the person, then you are in a sense, you are absolved of I mean, not absolved fully, but I mean you have done your responsibility. Because the convincing, that is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. Allah ta'ala gives the person the ability and convinces a person in his mind. So as much as, and sometimes it becomes difficult because the people are close to us, or a person is that you're working with him every day, or he's a student or something, and you want to convince him about something. So it becomes a very difficult thing for the person who's doing the dawah, who's trying to make the point. So I think at once you have explained as best as you can, then you look for another opportunity to explain it in another way. But it's not the responsibility, I don't think, of a person to convince a person. That convincing comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person will be convinced. Yes, the fact is that you have to also then love your life in a way that matches your action. That is a separate thing. But I think, I hope that...
Yeah, actually, it's almost the one is the sin in terms of how the sin or the wrong. If you're doing something wrong and somebody sees that this person is doing wrong, and he goes there and he tells him, what you've done to that person is not right.
Yes.
You must apologize for it. Ask for mafi. And he just pushes you away and he says, it's my business, I do what I want to do.
Yes.
It's me, it's my money,
that's right.
You can't tell me what to put right.
Yeah.
It's
yes.
In every facet of life you come across these things.
That's right. So I mean, like in that particular case, I think the nasiha, the amal bil ma'roof wa nahy anil munkar, you have executed. You have, in a sense, you have told that person, listen, you need to mend your relationship. What you have done is wrong. The transaction you have done is wrong. You have done your responsibility. So whether he's convinced of that, I don't think you can.
On the other hand, it may be that you perceive that he's doing wrong, but in the meantime, you may not know the 10-year history of that problem.
Okay.
You might not be so knowledgeable that you couldn't understand why he was doing, in your understanding, that he was doing wrong.
Yes.
In your understanding.
Yes.
Only the Almighty is perfect.
That's
and
right.
All person who's learned in that, who's a professional in that field,
Yes.
that could tell you that this is right or that is wrong. It's like what the judge does in the court.
Yes.
He perceives that to be wrong, and therefore we will pass the sentence accordingly.
Yes.
But in life, it's hit and miss
Yes.
situation.
Yes. Yeah, it becomes more.
It's complicated because you deal with personalities, and people will say, who are you to tell me what to do when you don't write yourself?
Like a child comes from an abused background. But that abuse is only within himself. The preacher is trying to perfect his, but the background of his abuse is stained in his heart or in his mind. Like many drug users come from the abused background. Where the parents abused the child to such an extent that there was no way out for him. I mean, maybe we're way too deep in this.
So, no.
It's a valid discussion.
It's a valid discussion.
It
relates to us.
our lives.
Yeah, very discussion. There's nothing so deep.
Comes to the masjid.
G.
But at the end of the day, the masjid coming is from Allah.
That's
I
right.
mean, you will not put your foot in a masjid if Allah doesn't permit.
That's right.
So it's like people giving dawah, going door to door.
Yes.
They give you the example to say, come to the masjid. And then it's entirely up to you to say, I'm coming, I'll meet you there. Meanwhile, you know what? It's very different. There is actually a very deep piece.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But yeah, it's all of these things about amal bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar are like that, isn't it? That a person, like you're saying, at which point is he convinced that he must come to the masjid? So you've tried your best to convince him, and then the fact at which point is he convinced that he needs to come to the masjid? That is his conviction now. I mean, when the dawah actually has Allah Ta'ala has given him the hidayat, and he comes to the masjid.
You know, like, I mean, your home environment is so important. But when you come out into the world, you have to face the world from different. You know, like all the parents used to say, what happens in this house, you keep it in this house. But today the media is so broad that the parents have no control over the children.
Yeah.
You know, those days it was different because what your father and mother said was like, and I mean, the respect, those days there was more respect than what they used to. You as a teacher or Maulana, know when you're addressing children, the discipline, you have to bring discipline which they don't have at home.
And I mean, the thing about this is that, you know, what we mustn't start to do is to think that the situation, no, that sometimes we feel that maybe the situation is all lost, you know.
Yeah.
That people are doing amal bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, and they're trying so hard, but everything seems to be lost. No, amal bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar is a good deed in itself, and it must carry weight, you know. And at the end of the day, I think we can only act within our what we know. And then maybe even if we make a mistake, and we don't advise in the right way, or we're unable to advise at a certain point, we know that it's still a duty that we have to do. And so we continue to do the amal bil ma'ruf. We have to do that.
You know, at the end of the day, you can only, as a layperson, as a human being, be observing what life going past in front of you. But at the end of the day, if I take this, you know, we are sitting here.
Yes.
But, you know, 60 years ago, nationalists were in power, were plotting and planning of white by night. Only whites will live at night time in cities. All the other populations will be kicked out. And we will not be, we are sitting here today because of what they did.
Yeah.
But it's the Almighty bigger plans.
Bigger plans, that's
We
right.
only had one mosque 60 years ago. Now we've got so many that we can't even count. And every, you know, if you look at Tarawih being prayed, even in homes,
Yeah, so
much prayed. So at the end of the day, we are not in charge of life. I think our responsibility is just to respond to our immediate exposure to what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's
Rightfully
yes.
exposed.
Yeah.
You can only do
what appears to you.
But
That's an important point. I think.
This is targeting mainly the Maulana, but the practicing is the word practicing, preach and practice. You know, like my father used to say, learn, teach, and.
But I think
that's the least.
Very key.
If I can say to it would he would refer to preachers, obviously, but like that other hadith about every man is a shepherd.
Yeah.
Look after his own flock. So, I mean, if you tell your child do something but you do it yourself, it refers to you then as well. If you're a senior partner in your company and you've got even two people working under you and you tell them you need to do this but I do that, it refers to you as well. And I think in the world of Allah made it such that every person has responsibility over some other person. So it would refer to everybody. At the end of the day, more so to somebody who has a larger audience who we say is a preacher, but, you know. Then,
general rule of thumb.
yeah, so it would refer to, I think, everybody. And the other one is the thing of how far do you go to stop or prevent somebody from some evil. I think that this way, if you can't stop it with your hand and say something with your mouth, if you can't say something with your mouth and think about it in your heart, I think gives you a fair analysis of according to how much power you have and how much strength you have and what capability and capacity you have, that much you have to do. So some people on the path make them small in the world and they will only be in a position to ever think that this is a bad action. But some people, and that's where the problem comes in the world, is where the leaders and the people who have strength, they can't tell their daughter, they can't tell their son, they can't tell the workers that we don't accept this, and they don't. And I think that's where you become very liable. I'm sure. You know.
In other words, the bigger your responsibility, the more.
However,
Yeah, I know.
Wherever Allah put you, right?
That's right.
So if you are a chairman of a committee and you have a right over the committee and